What is the best process for creating mated pairs in discus? And what is my maintenance routine on this tank with 13 future breeders? What kind of foods do these fish get to prepare themselves for breeding? Today we're going to go into all that. One of my most important tanks in the room right now. I'm going to go through the process start to finish, changing water, maintaining the tank, and feeding these guys. What's nice about this setup is I have that filter there. It's kind of cleaning that side of the tank and pushing everything over here so I don't have to open up that side. I can kind of just go through and get all this up. Now today what I'm going to be doing is probably, well, almost a 50%er, but I'm going to be using my breeder water to put back into this tank. In this tank I have 13 fish. All are potential breeders that can cross. I do have one brother and sister in this tank, and they're some of the nicest, the ones I bred, but they've been the most successful breeders in my room at this point, but they are the oldest, so we have to give that some consideration. And why aren't all fish breeding? Well, it's a maturity thing. Fish have to get to a certain age where they're effective at breeding. If you think you're going to get a fish that's 9 months old and lays eggs and you think that fish is going to be able to take care of those babies, it's very rare. Possible, but rare. Basically all I do is I use a big hose in my barrel, and you're going to notice the barrel turn on. That's my pump pumping stuff out to the yard. What's nice about this is with this filter right here, it's taking a lot of the particulates out of the water. It is helping biological. There's no chemical filtration. I do not use carbon in my discus tanks. This is a controversy in this hobby about carbon and discus. Now, could I put carbon in this tank to clear this water up a little bit for a while? Absolutely. But I would never run carbon full time in a discus tank. I believe hole in the head is actually caused by carbon stripping the water. So there's something in carbon that's just not conducive to discus, but I don't use it in any of my tanks. I haven't used carbon for 20 years. Now I used to when I was younger because I thought that's what you did, right? But it's just not necessary. You can probably use Purigen. I don't know anything about these chemicals because I literally use water and then some fulvic acid and then maybe water conditioner. That's all I use. And think about how much money you'll save by just going the easy route. Now, taking out water and replacing it is the most effective way to not only keep discus healthy, but to grow them correctly. All this fancy stuff that these businesses are trying to sell, I get it. They're trying to be profitable. I have tons of products I could sell, but I am just not willing to sell it if I do not use it. Now, is that saying I'm right or wrong as far as what they are selling? Absolutely not. But I have just found over time the best way to keep these fish is real food and clean water. It really is no secret. Now, genetics play a huge part because a lot of the Asian fish are hopped up on hormones and very, very highly inbred. And those are two factors that are going to hinder you in your success of keeping these fish. I've bred all the colorful fish, all the orange and solid blues, and I don't even remember the names because it's something I'm not interested in anymore. And when you get a spawn of 100 fish and 30% of them have to be culled because of defects, something is very, very wrong. With this technique, it's about 1% culled. And usually it's bladder problem as far as they're not swimming right, gill issues, short gills, eye problems. Those are the three things I call for first. When we get into about a month or two, I do a second call. And that call is usually for issues of finnage. Finnage is not right, like a chipped fin or something like that. And you can spot those early, but I like to give them that 1 month because sometimes those chip fins or injuries. So I don't spend a lot of time with water changes, so there's the pump, right? So that's pumping water to my yard now. In the winter, I cannot do that. It gets diverted to the drain. What's nice about this tank is the white bottom and the white back, because I can tell when things are getting a little out of control as far as algae buildup, which doesn't bother me. And I do wipe it down probably every couple months. But I really like the bottom clean on these discus tanks, because I don't want them picking up anything. Really what this process is about, and I kind of went a little bit longer than I usually do, is just draining the water, right? I want to get it, so I got this marked. But the reason I mark my breeding tanks or my future breeding tanks is I want to know when I hit 40 gallons, because that's the size of my barrel. I like to empty my barrel and then refill it, and that way I can be very precise in the measurements on the breeding water. Now the breeding water is on the website. It is a donation package, and I did that for a reason. I just want to make sure that you guys try it long term. And to me, I consider it more of donating to my business for this process, because it's something that I spent a lot of time to work on, and I wanted to make sure it came out right. Now it's very successful. Everything is breeding. I got about 100 baby Corridora F1 Pompanolos. I have the Rams, which, to tell you the truth, I haven't been focused on them. I could pull the eggs, but it's just something I've been so busy right now. I just have not been able to pull the Rams. But I got only a pair left of those Rams, and then I got another pair down here, and a male down here. So this male down here actually killed its female, because I tried the old technique of heavy foliage in a tank with a pair, and it just did not work. You know, these guys are the Florida strain right here, and they're doing okay, but they just don't have the pop of color, and I believe they're crossed with electric blue. I don't know, but something's not natural about their coloration as far as the German blue. That drops down this filter here, and that's that noise you're hearing. So the pump and the filter is what you're hearing as far as the noises. But I'm getting down to 30 gallons, so it drains really quick. I'm gonna go get the water set up. So this is the incoming water, and it goes to a barrel, 40-gallon barrels. I'm 35 gallons, so I'll go a little bit more. I usually stay right above the 40, right between 35 and... But the water's aged. Now, it's not important to age the water as far as the water. It's important to age the water so the mixing process that we do with the breeding water is stable. And it's a perfect pH, because we want that pH to drop a couple marks. Usually the RO water is about a neutral, right? So we want to come in at about 6.6, 6.8. 7 is okay, because this water in here is probably about a 6.4. And soft, very soft. All right, I'm going to pull this so I can shut this pump off. Okay, then I just use this on-off switch. You can get these, I think, at Home Depot or Lowe's, whatever, and just gives a signal to send the water in. And it's pretty cool. So that's Home Depot if you want. Just a system that hooks up to your outlet. All right, so what is the best way to create breeding pairs? In my experience, you can put pairs together and be successful. Not as successful as letting them pair up naturally. When they pair up naturally, it's amazing, because they do this dance together, and it's a whole ritual they go through, and they like show their size and come in sideways. When you put two fish together and force them to breed, they don't do that dance as intense. They kind of just go through the motions. That dance is beautiful to watch. It's one of the best parts of breeding for me, because I know when you see those pairs doing that, they are literally bonding, and they're bonding for life. That process is pretty much unbreakable. I've had discus pairs that were very, very bonded, and one of them died and the other one ended up just stopped eating. So I used to breed birds, and birds mate for life, and it's a fact. They basically like to be together forever. So that initial bonding, the first bonding that they make, is crucial. Now there's no proof that happens in fish, but with discus are just a different kind of fish. They have their own language, and I know that sounds like, oh, they talk. No, they don't talk. They show different color patterns. They show different striping patterns. They show stress patterns. Their language is pretty amazing. And I'm not saying I can speak discus, but I understand their language by looking at them for 30 years and seeing, you know, when a fish is not doing well, I can look at that fish and it's basically telling me I am not doing well. And usually the first indication is color. When you see a fish that is not doing well, check its eyes, look at it. When you see a healthy discus, you can count the rings in their eyes, and they usually have a gold ring and then an outside ring, and the inside of their coloration is just a bright, bright color. But literally when they get sick, it dulls down. So these fish are amazing as far as pairing up together and letting them do the process. Now, that is expensive because we need to have 6 to 7 fish to make that happen. And because it's so hard to sex them as far as males and females. Now, there are little nuances you can see, and over time, you can get that percentage up pretty high. Not 100% because it's just, there's too many factors. But usually finnage, you can look at finnage and you can see it's got a pretty amazing shape to the finnage. And that usually indicates males because the males have the dress. They want to show on the breeding dress. They want to show those colors. That's how they attract the female. And females want the biggest fish, just like, you know, every other species. The biggest and strongest are usually picked to breed. So I have 13 fish in here. I counted, and they're probably from about 7 different sources. Now, what if the brother and sister cross and want to breed? Not recommended. I do not recommend that. But if they're 2 beautiful fish and they're brother and sister, I will let that happen one time. But I will not keep crossing their genetics back to each other and get those big chins like the royal family. Just kidding. Oh, man. Gotta be careful what I say on here because I might have the royal family watching my channel. Okay, but anyways, there's water right here. Tank water about 83, 84 degrees. This water about 77, 78 degrees. I do not heat my breeding water. The aeration will actually make the pH rise. Now, it's a temporary thing, right? But I don't want to be putting 7.6 into this tank. I want to be putting 6.8 into this tank. So no aeration, it just sits there. We don't cover it. I heat my rooms. The water heats up naturally over days. Yeah, I would say this is about 78 degrees right now, which is fine. So almost 50%, 84 to 78, and that's fine. And I would be fine at 74 degrees putting this tank. No problem with 50%. Now that's me. Don't do that. As the internet says, oh, you got to match it perfect. Whatever. I have never matched my water perfect. This is how I check my temperature. Get warm, 84, 83.27, 78.56. That's how I check my temperature, okay? And you just learn over time, and literally you can walk up to tanks and feel the temperature and say, oh, that's warm or that's cool. It's a range. We don't have to hit the number. There's no such thing as, oh, it has to be 84 degrees. Now, one thing with the discus is, the wild fish actually that I bring in, I keep cooler. I keep them sometimes 79 degrees, 80 degrees, and they do really well because in the wild there's a big fluctuation in temperatures. You know, you have water that's sometimes cool from the Andes runoff, and then sometimes you have low water that heats up a lot. So they go from 78, 77, to 90 degrees in the wild. So they're pretty tolerant to that temperature difference. But, you know, you also have to remember, a lot of these discus come from not just rivers, but lakes. And lakes, if you ever swam in a lake and been at the top and it's warm because the sun's hitting it, and then you dove down, you knew that it dropped 10, 15 degrees, maybe more. I don't think discus are really as delicate as people think as far as temperature. I think temperature is something that we've come up with, like, we got to hold these guys at a certain temperature. And actually, they enjoy that cool water coming in, believe it or not. And the breeding season in the Amazon starts when the Andes melt and that cool runoff comes in. And that's what triggers spawning because they know water's rising, more food, warmer out, it's time to have babies and repopulate. Here's the thing with the Amazon, and people like say, oh, you're taking fish out of the Amazon. You have to realize every year the fish die because water just gets down to these tight pools. There's no oxygen, and so that's why these fish have hundreds and hundreds of babies, because to repopulate, if they have 150 babies and one fish makes it, they've done their job. Their genetic pool moves on. That's all it is in the wild. They're just trying to repopulate. Now, there are fish that make it year after year, and there's some fish that have even adapted in the wild to breathe air because these pools get so depleted of oxygen, they have to actually get their air from from the outside. I love doing water changes. A lot of people don't like water changes and want to make it automatic. I'm going to tell you something about automatic water changes. It's great for a while, but the first time that you are not present and it dumps a ton of chlorine in your tank because your filters are old and because you got high calcium and it basically clogs up those lines and you're not paying attention. I mean, there's so many variables that can happen as far as automatic water change. Now, am I against it? I am not against it. I think it's something that if you can use it and be vigilant and stay on top of it. But here's what happens. I'm going to tell you right now because it happened to me and I lost tens of thousands of dollars because I put my room on automatic water changes. And you get this mentality of, oh, I'm tired, I just got from work. It's handled. You go run to the hospital, you're there for 2 days, it's handled. But what's not handled is you had a malfunction on day one and you haven't gone in your room because you think it's handled and everything is floating at the top. I'm not telling you this to scare you or to deter you from using automatic processes because I think they have their place. What I am telling you is if you're going to go that route, be vigilant. Check it every day. So this process is right here is I have no choice. I can be exhausted and I come down to my room and I check every tank. And something doesn't look right, first thing I do is a water change. That's the first thing, and I sit here and as I'm doing this water change, I'm looking around, I'm checking stuff. All the filters working. Heater's on. Is it warm enough? Is there food somewhere in the tank? A dead fish, right? Another reason, guys, I'm telling you, I had that happen just about 6 months ago where I lost 3 prized fish because I was having some family issues, my father had passed, and I just wasn't into coming to the room. Right? Now this was a day, one day I missed. But what happened is early in the first morning, a fish hit the glass, this is my guess, hit the glass, bolted, and died. Now that fish rotted in that tank for 24 to 36 hours and killed everything in the tank. Now did I learn a lesson there? I know better. But you know what, sometimes in life things just come up and things happen and that sucked. It sucked because I had about $300 invested in those fish. They were beautiful, future breeders. That's when I started my bacterial package that I made on the website that I think every fish keeper should have. Every fish keeper, not discus keepers, all fish keepers should have that emergency bacterial kit. Everyone should have that in their room. I don't care. It's the first thing to go to if you have an issue. Even, you know, parasites aren't going to kill your fish. It's going to be a bacteria issue or a fungal issue that's going to kill your fish. And not getting on those within the first 5 minutes, every second that ticks, you're going to pay a price. These guys are amazing fish. I understand they see me as their provider of food, but they are pretty personable and always come up to the glass. Even after a heavy feeding, they come to the glass. It's like they're interested in what I'm doing always. You cannot overchange water. It's like over vacuuming your carpets. There's no such thing. You cannot over vacuum and you cannot over water change these guys. You have to understand in the Amazon, there's millions and millions and millions of gallons per second flowing through the Amazon. It's a fresh water change every second of every day. The only time that goes away is when the dry season hits. And that's when these fish get tough. I think they've gotten a bad rap. I have people come into my room all the time and say, yeah, I'd like to keep discus, but you know, they're not a very hardy fish. And I come back with baloney, but I don't say that. I say the other word, and it's BS. Because they're one of the hardiest fish I've ever kept in my life. Beautiful, just stunning fish, but they are hardcore fish. I've had fish that had chunks taken out of their head. And those fish lived, and not only lived, they thrived and lived long lives. Now my longest discus I've ever had was 16 years. It was Old Blue, man. She was gorgeous. Just an amazing fish. I try not to get attached to my fish because my theory is everything is for sale at the right price. I've had people come into my room and say, oh, you know, how much for that fish? And I never say, oh, it's $50 or it's $100. If I love that fish is $350, $400. And then what happens about 1 out of 10 times, they say, I'll take it. And you're like, dang it, why didn't I raise the price higher? But you know, I thought that was a fair price for what I was selling. And I thought, you know what, if they're willing to pay that price, I'm willing to sell that fish, because no one's going to buy that fish for that much money and not take care of it. Hopefully, but that's kind of my thought process. I will drain this barrel all the way, redose my breeding water kit, and then let that sit for another day. But now I have another barrel that's ready to go at any time. Just remember to enjoy your fish, because something like this could be considered labor or work. To me, it's not. It's part of the process, and I enjoy it because I know now they've gotten everything they need to thrive. Fry will not live in this tank. That's not what this is about. This is setting up pairs and doing it naturally and watching that dance. When I see that dance, those pairs go into their own tank. All right, let's feed these guys.